He didn't put a bullet in his wife's lover. He did something much worse. When Victor decided to sleep with Roman Castelli's wife, he expected to end up at the bottom of a river. Instead, the Mafia boss promised the betrayed wife he wouldn't physically harm him. But Roman is a master of loopholes. In just 3 weeks, Victor lost his company, his home, his investors, and his mind. Watch till the end to see how a criminal mastermind uses legal, financial terrorism to systematically erase a man's existence. Let us pause the movie right here and look at this opening shot together. We are starting in a ballroom so suffocated in gold leaf it makes you sick to your stomach. Look at Roman Castelli standing over there. He does not move a single muscle. Because real power never has to fidget. The guy is a walking shadow. Tonight, you and I are watching the absolute slaughter of the domestic bond. We are going to witness 2 strangers figure out their spouses have been playing house behind their backs. Watch Elena here. She is about to turn from a pathetic ghost into absolute survivor. With a survivor, here is a sim life lesson for loyalty is the most expensive currency in the world, so stop handing it out to cheap people. The air in this room pokes you through the screen. It is thick with the smell of cheap jasmine and that disgusting arrogance that only comes from old money. The camera pans up to the massive crystal chandeliers and then drops right down to Elena, standing completely alone on the edge of the frame. She is shivering in this silk dress that might as well be tissue paper in a room full of hungry wolves. These guys are trading fake laughs and sealing dirty deals, totally ignoring the wives standing right next to them. It is a brutal truth we all have to learn. You can buy a $10,000 dress, but you cannot buy a single drop of real human empathy. Elena is just a pretty little paperweight for Victor. I want you to picture the car ride over here. Victor probably barked his orders from backseat mile. Look pretty, do not embarrass me. But the absolute second they walk through those doors, he ditches her. The director lets the camera just sit on Elena for 43 miserable minutes. She is staring at a black phone screen, and that dead silence is screaming louder than the jazz band in the corner. This is her entire marriage in one single shot. Dragged out to make him look good, then tossed in the corner like an old coat. Listen, if someone wears your love like a temporary accessory, you need the guts to take it off and walk away. He is off making deals, while she loses her mind in the dark. Being totally invisible is basically her full-time job now. But hit pause for a second, because the whole movie shifts right here. A voice, cold as absolute winter, cuts through the room and asks if she is waiting for her husband. Watch the extras in the background. They literally back away in pure terror. Because standing right next to her is Roman Castelli. The media cannot even say his name without choking on it. It is a simple fact of life. The most dangerous person in the room is always the one who has everything to hide and absolutely zero left to lose. Behind that incredible polite smile, Roman is a monster who built an empire on blood. He makes whole families disappear, and right now he is buying her a drink. He steps right into her personal space, draped in this sharp black suit. Look at his eyes, they are completely dead, totally scooped out from a lifetime of watching people destroy each other. Elena starts stammering this pathetic apology. But Roman just clinically points out she's been staring at a blank screen for 20 minutes. She tries to keep the perfect wife mask on, whispering that Victor is just networking. And boom, Roman swings the hammer. He casually mentions Victor is upstairs in a private suite, locked inside with Roman's own wife. This is the part that breaks your heart. The worst truths always hit you when you are desperate looking the other way. She just freezes, watching her entire life burn down. Roman does not give her a single inch of breathing room. He just rattles off the coordinates of their ruined lives. The 4th floor, private suite, heavy oak door. You can see Elena start to physically shake. She is begging the Mafia boss to tell her he got the wrong guy. It is the classic bargaining stage of grief, happening right in front of us. Roman just stares at her like a judge handing down a death penalty, asking if she really thinks he would screw up something this big. That is when the glass shatters in her head. All those late nights smelling like cheap perfume, the phone constantly placed face down. Never ignore your gut instinct, because ignoring the smoke just guarantees you are going to burn. Look closely at her hands. Her knuckles are turning bone white against that crystal glass just to keep from passing out. She looks right at the king of the city and asks why he is handing her this hand grenade. And here is where the movie gets brilliant. Roman exhales, and for 1 second, the psychopath actually looks tired. He admits he spent the last 3 months lying to his own mirror, begging himself to believe it was just paranoia. When she whispers his wife's name, his jaw practically cracks. He says his wife became a total stranger 6 months ago. Pay attention to this, when the person you love completely changes their daily routine overnight. That is the loudest warning siren you will ever hear. Now comes the absolute knockout punch. Roman casually mentions how Victor suddenly developed a massive obsession with these exact same charity dinners. You can almost feel the room spinning with her. She just keeps whispering that it is impossible, hanging on to the absolute last thread of her marriage. But Roman cuts it. He tells her he told himself the exact same lies, while watching his wife desperately delete text messages at 2 a.m. Let us be real for a second. Keeping dirty secrets guarantees your own destruction, and demanding the ugly truth is your only way out. Elena tries to remember the last time Victor actually touched her with any real love. And the most tragic part? Her mind is totally blank. Roman just straightens his cuffs, totally completely deadpan. He tells her he did not put on a tuxedo just to throw a jealous little fit in the lobby. He came here to corner the rats and drag them out into the light. Elena finally lifts her chin. Her voice is shaking like a leaf, but she asks him what happens now. Roman gives her the ultimate choice. She can go back to her giant empty house and keep watering a dead garden, or she can walk up those stairs and look the monster right in the eye. Listen to me. Running away from a terrible truth only ensures it will run you over when it finally catches up. Half of her wants to bolt for the exit, but then, this beautiful, ugly anger finally lights up in her chest. I love this tracking shot. They walk across the ballroom floor, and the highest rollers in the city part like the Red Sea. These billionaires are to look at Roman with actual animal terror. Even the armed guards blocking the stairs take one look at him, and practically vanish into the wallpaper. Real power is incredibly quiet, and the lesson here is that if you actually run the world, you never have to raise your voice to prove it. They climb those freezing marble steps side by side, leaving the fake jazz and the fake people behind them. The 4th floor is just this dead, silent hallway of ridiculous luxury, and waiting for them at the very end of the corridor is the finish line, a massive, heavy wooden door. There is just this tiny sliver of yellow light bleeding out from under the door frame. Roman stops dead in his tracks and whispers that this is the room. Elena stares at the polished brass handle like it is a lead grenade. She actually begs him one last time, asking what happens to them if is all a massive mistake. Roman does not even answer her. He just lets the suffocating silence do the talking. She forces her shaking hand to reach out, feeling the cold metal under her fingers. Turning this knob means burning her entire life down to the ground. Facing an ugly truth takes a terrifying amount of courage, but living a comfortable lie will rot your soul from the inside out. She takes a breath and shoves the door open. Let us pause them right here for the grand finale. The room is absolutely drenched in ridiculous, vulgar money, and right in the dead center, Victor, hopelessly tangled up with the mafia boss's wife. She looks like a trapped little bird, totally addicted to the poison ruining her life. But the detail that really twists the knife in Elena's chest is how Victor's hand is resting so gently on the other woman's back. The door swings wide, and the two lovers freeze like deer caught in the headlights of a big truck. The silence in the room hits like a physical punch to the gut. All the color instant drains out of Victor's face. Betrayal is a fatal game, and the house always wins. His pathetic little fantasy is officially over. Let us hit pause on this opening frame together, shall we? Notice how Elena does not shed a single tear or throw a desperate fit. Instead, she just stands there totally frozen, while the entire foundation of her marriage turns to dust right in front of her. Across the suite, Serafina is scrambling. Her eyes dart around like a trapped animal reeling there is no way out, stammering Roman's name. Roman shuts the panic down with 2 quiet words. Do not. He does not yell, but the room instantly drops to absolute ice. He studies the guilty pair under that amber light, like a judge handing down a death sentence. Here is the bitterest truth about human nature. When you betray an apex predator who operates with that kind of chilling control, it will cost you absolutely everything. Watching human guilt unfold is always such a tragic spectacle. He stands there shaking, complete stripped of that fake confidence he wears like a cheap suit. He weakly tries to rationalize what he did, but Roman cuts his excuses dead with one sharp question. How long? Serafina is paralyzed, staring at the floor. When Victor finally chokes on his shame and admits the affair has been going on for months, you can actually see the light drain right out of Elena's eyes. She grips the door frame just to stop her knees from giving out. She spent countless lonely nights internalizing his coldness, convinced she was the problem. Listen, never carry the blame for someone else's broken character. She finally forces out a quiet why, sounding totally defeated. This guy Victor actually has the audacity to look his devastated wife in the eye and claim he does not know why he did it. It is such a pathetic, hollow defense that Elena almost lets out a choked laugh. He seriously speaks if cheating is just some random accident, like he tripped and accidentally fell into a stranger's bed. She fires back, demanding to know how he just boxed up their vows. Meanwhile, Serafina scrapes together a shred of desperate courage and begs Roman to negotiate. But Roman operates on a completely different frequency. He just adjusts his silver cufflinks with the cold precision of a man preparing for war. He tells her the choice was hers, but the consequence belonged to him. Sometimes, absolute silence is the loudest boundary you can possibly set. The silence that follows drops like a heavy stone, sucking all the oxygen out of the suite. Victor desperately tries to step closer, whispering frantic apologies just to soothe his own bruised ego, but Elena simply raises a hand, shutting him down completely. Notice how her voice is not shaking anymore. She looks at the man she promised her life to, and realizes she is staring at a total stranger wearing a familiar face. We all have to learn this harsh lesson eventually. Do not ignore the giant red flags just because you fell in love with a fiction version of someone. She asked him how many times he looked her right in the eye and lied without a single flinch of guilt. How many nights did he come home straight from this very hotel? His fake tears mean absolute zero to her now. Now Elena delivers a freezing dose of reality, and you and I really need to unpack this moment together. She tells Victor he does not feel genuine remorse. He is only sorry his sloppy deception finally caught up with him. As she turns to leave, Victor actually drops to his knees in a gross display of manipulative desperation. For a split second, her footsteps slow down. It is that tragic reflex where the victim still feels tied to the person hurting them, but the memory of all those lonely, anxious nights kicks in, pushing her forward. She tells him their marriage ended the exact second he decided his mistress was worth the risk. She walks out with total grace, and Roman follows right behind in silence. Never offer your loyalty to someone who treats your heart like a disposable option. The adrenaline crash makes her walk through the lobby, a dizzying, blurred smear of noise. Elena barely remembers passing the grand ballroom. The shock only starts to wear off when the freezing night air hits her skin. And that is when the tears of real grief break free. The sidewalks are packed with laughing strangers, totally oblivious that her entire universe just collapsed. Then, she notices Roman stepping out of the glass doors. He does not offer empty apologies or hollow comfort. He just stands there, sharing the bitter cold with a stranger who carries his exact same wound. When someone's reality shatters, a steady, silent presence is often the greatest gift you can give them. Elena wipes her stinging eyes and asks what they do now. Roman looks out into the dark and whispers now. Roman looks out over the city skyline, delivering a line that changes everything. Now, they learn exactly what it costs to betray the wrong people. His icy certainty is absolutely chilling, completely overwhelmed. Elena stammers that she is not looking for some cinematic, bloody revenge. She just wants to find a way to breathe again. Roman quietly assures her she will not have to lift a single finger, but he promises those two will choke on their regrets. And guys, the most terrifying part of this scene is his total lack of volume. Controlled, quiet anger is always infinitely more dangerous than someone throwing a tantrum. Shivering in the cold, Elena mutters that she needs to get to her sister's place. Roman silently hands her a thick, unmarked card with just a phone number on it. Before vanishing into the shadows, Roman tells her to use that number, if Victor even thinks about crossing her boundaries again. Elena stares at the heavy card and asks the most logical question. Why would a feared crime boss go out of his way to help a random Philian? Roman stops, and for just a second that iron facade slips. He quietly points out that they were both stabbed in the back by the exact people who swore to keep them safe. He knows that crushing isolation of reeling, your support system was a lie. It is crazy how shared trauma can forge the most unbreakable alliances. He looks her dead in the eye, promises she is not alone anymore, and fades in the dark. She is left holding a card with no name on it, because men operating at Roman Castelli's level of power do not ever need an introduction. His dark reputation absolutely precedes him. Elena drops the card in her purse, desperate to get as far away from that hotel as humanly possible. Almost immediately, her phone starts buzzing like crazy. Victor is blowing up her screen with centene missed calls and frantic messages begging for her to come back. We have all seen this before, right? It is just a guilty conscience panicking, trying to soothe its own massive anxiety. But Elon's weekend wife, she powers the phone all the while, cutting his axe to her entirely. Listen to me. A betrayal this deep does not earn a second chance. It earns a permanent, non-negotiable exit from your life. She finally makes it to her sister's apartment, throws the heavy deadbolt, and just shuts down into total silence for 3 long days. For 3 entire days, just exists as a ghost, mechanically deleting Victor's endless messages without reading a single word. Her sister Mai handles the situation beautifully. She does not demand exhausting explanations, and she does not force any toxic positivity on her. She just keeps the coffee hot and lets Elena stare at the wall. Honestly, the best way to help someone survive fresh trauma is just giving them the quiet space to process their grief. But on the 4th morning, the spell breaks, and calmly says she needs a lawyer. When Maya gently asks if she is finally ready to file for divorce, Elena corrects her. Her voice is ice cold now. She says she wants to completely ruin him. Maya just nods, saying she knows an attorney who specializes in absolute destruction. Elena watches the endless stream of city traffic moving below her window. It is such a brutal reality to swallow. The world simply refuses to stop spinning, even when your entire personal universe has just burned to the ground. Life does not pause just because your heart is shattered, and accepting that cold fact is the first step to surviving it. She walks over to the counter and finally turns her phone back on. A predictable, pathetic flood of voicemails from Victor instantly clogs her screen. But then, a text from an unknown catches her eye. It plainly states that her husband tried to stage a public confrontation downtown, and security had to drag him out. The message ends with a very calm, calculated promise to handle Victor personally. It is signed with just 2 letters, R and C Roman Castelli. You and I have probably both held onto relationships way past their expiration date, hoping for a miracle. But Elena is finally severing that toxic bond. She quiet saves the number and begins a ruthless purge of her entire digital life. Every single smiling photograph, every manipulative text from Victor gets permanently sent to the trash. Cutting toxic people completely out of your orbit is the only real way to protect your peace. Maya watches this intense shift in her sister and asks who those initials belong to. Elena does not even look up from the screen. She just calls him a man who understands the actual price of loyalty. The old, submissive version of Elena died in that hotel suite. The lesson here is simple, guys. Never shrink your own worth just to keep a broken relationship on life support. Alright, let us hit pause right here and look at the exact second a bleeding heart turns cold. 3 days after her life exploded, Elena walks into the office of Caroline Reeves, a lawyer who eats toxic husbands for breakfast. They sit in a dead, sterile boardroom. Caroline clicks her pen, a tiny sound that hits like a gunshot, and asks for the ugly truth. Elena does not shed a single tear. She just sits there, numb, listing every twisted mind game Victor played on her. It breaks your heart, seeing how she had to kill off her own emotions just to survive him. But here is the bitter truth we all need to remember. If your chest gets tight around someone, listen to it. Your body always knows a predator is in the room, long before your brain is ready to admit you are the prey. Caroline does not blink at the tragic backstory. She is shark-smelling blood, steering the conversation straight to Victor's money. Elena lists the hidden accounts, pulling apart her husband's fake empire piece by piece. When Caroline realizes Victor has no family money to save him, a vicious, the ultimate question. You want a question. Do you want a clean break, or do you want to burn him to the ground? Elena wants ashes. It is terrifying, but honestly, you have to ache for her. And the bitter truth of this whole mess is simple. The most dangerous person on earth is not the arrogant bully. It is the victim who has had their entire soul stolen, and suddenly wakes up reeling they have absolutely nothing left to lose. Caroline drops a cold bucket of reality on the table. She warns that Victor will go totally nuclear to protect his fragile ego. Elena just sits there like a statue. Let him fight, she whispers. Look at this scene, guys. Most people in that chair are still crying, secretly hoping the bad guy will suddenly wake up and love them. Elena's heart is boarded up, and that is the real tragedy here. She had to bury her hope just to survive the man who promised to cherish her. But there is a brutal strength in finally accepting that the glass is shattered. Sometimes walking away from the broken pieces is the only way to heal. The pen scrapes across the papers, sealing her fate. But right at the elevator doors, Caroline casual drops a mess bomb. She says one name, Serafina Castelli. Let us pause and look at the mess inside Alina's head. Caroline warns her that Roman Castelli is no knight in shining armor. He is a ruthless man who runs on dominance. But Alina is so starved for kindness that she actually defends him. She clings to one nice thing he did, forgetting that wolves never do favors for sheep without wanting a meal in return. You just want to reach into the screen and shake her. She is projecting her own good heart onto a sociopath, thinking they share a deep bond. It is the absolute saddest mistake a broken person can make. Listen up, because this is a harsh lesson we all need. When a known walks up to you acting gentle, do not let your guard down. Start looking for the sharp teeth hidden right behind their polite smile. The elevator ride down feels like a drop into the underworld. Elena watches the numbers fall, messaging Roman that the legal trap is set. His reply pops up instantly. Traitors deserve zero mercy. It is a chilling reminder of his dark nature, but Elena does not care. She steps in the freezing street, and you can literally see her transform. The sad, paralyzed victim is gone, replaced by a woman running on the high octane fuel of absolute rage, and the sweet irony across town. Her arrogant husband has no idea the floor is about to fall out from under his life. It is tragically beautiful. When sadness tries to drag you to the bottom, weaponized anger is a powerful life raft. Let your righteous fury pull you out of the dark, instead of letting your grief bury you alive. Let us flip the camera to Victor and watch a massive ego absolutely implode. It starts quiet. A contract vanishes. An investor stops calling. Victor is too arrogant to see the trap, so he blames the market instead of his own toxic behavior. But in just 2 weeks, his entire fake universe crashes. Partners run for the hills. Employees bail. You watch him sweating through his expensive suit, panicking as his inflated self-image pops like a cheap balloon. And right at that exact second of terror, his intercom buzzes. It is his wife's lawyer calling to collect. The irony is just delicious. He truly thought he was the smartest guy in the room. But when you close your eyes to the pain you cause, your own arrogant ignorance becomes the anchor that drags you to the bottom of the ocean. Look at how fast a bully falls apart when they realize they no longer hold the leash. Victor's hands are shaking as he grabs the phone. Caroline sounds like a rowboat made of ice, casually let him know the legal strike is happening. Sweat pours down his face. He stammers, begged to talk to Elena, desperate trying to get his favorite victim back under his control. Caroline shuts him down instantly, demand his financial records. That is when the sheer terror hits his eyes. He realizes they found his hidden money. Is pure poet justice. He spent years hiding his dirty secrets, thinking he was a genius. But here is the hard lesson. When accountability finally kicks down your door, every toxic lie you buried in the dark gets dragged straight into the blinding light. You and I are about to watch the final tantrum of a cornered rat. Victor tries to play the tough guy screaming his books are clean. Caroline does not argue. She gives him dead silence, letting his tantrum burn out, then hangs up with a threat to call the cops. That dial tone hits him like a punch to the gut. Gasping for air, he dials his side piece, Serafina, desperate for someone to stroke his bruised ego. But Serafina is sobbing, totally paralyzed by the fear of her own mobster husband. She is completely useless to him now. It is a pathetic scene, but it proves a brutal point. Panic rips the fake mask right off your face. When your house of cards finally collapses, the person who helped you cheat will never be the one to pull you from the rubble. Victor grips the phone so hard his knuckles are white, screaming that Roman is the unseen hand destroying his life. Serafina is so terrified she can barely speak. Her voice shakes as she begs Victor to never call her again. Trapped in her husband's financial hold, Victor is stunned. He actually believed they had true love and demands to know how she could abandon him. Serafina shatters his romantic fantasy, telling him his own massive ego caused this nightmare. Look at him now, no wife and a mob boss hunting him down. The irony is just staggering. There is zero loyalty among betrayers when you build a relationship entirely out of dirty secrets. Do not be shocked when it completely vaporizes the second real consequence show up at the front door. I only do what your fragile ego needs to hear, she whispers. Victor just stands there. The silence is deafening, as 10 years of arrogant ambition circles the drain. Stick with me here, guys, because we jump forward 3 weeks. We are back in that cold boardroom with Elena. Carolyn slides a thick file across the table. It is basically an autopsy of Victor's life. The cash is gone. Lawsuits are piling up. His tire fake identity is bleeding out on paper. It is terrifying but incredibly sad to witness. We all like to think karma takes its sweet time to balance the scales. But every once in a while, the universe sends a bigger, darker monster to hand, deliver your absolute ruin straight to your front door. Look at Elena's face as she reads the numbers. She is in absolute shock at how violently fast her husband's empire collapses. Caroline lays out the cold facts. Someone in the shadows is erasing Victor from the map. Elena's heart hammers, because she knows exactly who Roman. Caroline taps her pen, snapping Elena back to the math. If Victor goes bankrupt, there is zero money left for Elena to take. They have to grab the cash now. Elena sits there torn but feeling wonderfully vindicated and absolutely terrified. She whispers that she never asked Roman to go this far. But this is the bitter truth about playing with fire. If you unleash a ruthless wolf to hunt down your abuser, you can't act surprised when he burns down the entire forest just to catch his prey. Caroline stares at Elena hesitating like a scientist studying a bug. The machine of ruin is running, and their job is to secure the money. Elena snaps the folder shut with a heavy thud, giving the green light to seize every last penny. If Victor goes broke, that is just the tax he paid for his abuse. But here is the beautiful part. Elena refuses to let his cruelty turn her into a monster. Caroline thinks a good heart is a weakness, but Elena realizes something massive. Her empathy is exactly why she will heal, while Victor rots away in his own mess. As we close the book on this, remember this final lesson. The greatest revenge in the world is not destroying your enemy. It is walking hell halfway through free hell and refusing to let the flames change who you are. Let us pause the movie right here and look at this setup together, you and I. Elena is standing by the elevator when her hearse reads up. It is Roman. He tells her he is taking care of Victor. For most people, husband problem sounds like a win. But for Elena, that text is a waking nightmare. She refuses to be just a pawn in some alpha male revenge game. She calls him, her hand shaking, and demands a face-to-face meeting. Roman stays totally quiet on the other end, letting the silence draw the threatening, before dropping an address downtown. Look closely at this moment, guys. If a hungry wolf offers to guard your sheep, you have to build a fence immediately. If you do not set that hard line, whatever blood gets spilled next is on your hands too. He gives her exactly 20 minutes. Every alarm bell in her head is screaming at her to run the other way. You do not just grab coffee with a syndicate leader. But here is the tragic irony when your whole life has already burned to the ground. Playing with fire does not seem so scary anymore. She walks into this painfully normal cafe. Hearing the soft clinking of coffee cups around a guy who could order a hit before finishing his latte is just wild. He sits in a dark corner, soaking up all the oxygen in the room. She takes one deep breath and sits down across from the monster. Here is the bitter truth we have to swallow. When your world falls apart, stepping into the cage with the lion is sometimes the only way to prove you are still alive. Just never forget that he can still bite. The camera pushes in on Roman under these awful, harsh fluorescent lights. Yes, he is still terrifying, but if you look closely, the guy is completely exhausted. His soul is just running on fumes. He slides a black coffee across the table to her. He remembered her order, which is honestly sweet and totally creepy. She takes it, but she does not back down. She looks this crime lord in the eye and tells him to call off his hounds. Roman does not even flinch. He just leans back and asks her one heavy question. Why? She tells him that crushing Victor into dust will not erase the betrayal. It is just going to leave a bigger mess. And guys, this is the fatal spot right here. We all want payback, but revenge is literally just drinking poison and hoping the other guy drops dead. Now watch Roman flip the script on her. Or if it is literally the only thing keeping bad people in check. Elena grips her coffee cup like a lifeline, arguing that crushing Victor will just birth another broken, angry monster in the world. She still believes pain should be healed, not turned into a weapon. But Roman lives on a totally different planet. For him, this was not just a messy breakup. Victor publicly humiliated the boss. If Roman lets that slide, the streets will eat him alive. It is a brutal paradox. We want to cheer for Elena's mercy, but Roman is living the dark reality of the world. You can draw all the boundaries you want, but if you do not punish the people who cross them, you are just handing the knife back to your abuser. Roman pins her down with this dead, empty stare and completely tears her logic apart. He is not throwing a temper tantrum. He is a guy running an empire built on terror, and Victor just kicked the foundation. Elena realizes with this horrible, sinking feeling that she is not talking to a hurt boyfriend. She is negotiating with a force of nature. She practically whispers, asking if he is refusing to stop. His jaw gets tight, and he drops the hammer. He cannot stop. The machine is already moving. The silence between them gets so heavy it is hard to breathe. While people walk by outside having absolute no clue what is happening, here is the tragic lesson. You can earn a normal person's respect, but a kingpin's fear demands constant sacrifices. Break his pride, and you get absolute ruin. Stick with me, you and I, because this is where Elena pulls off a miracle. She stares this mob boss and draws a hard line in the sand. Take Victor's money, take his companies, but no blood gets spilled. Roman studies her face, looking for the catch. He thinks she is still in love with the guy who broke her, but she shuts that down immediately. She refuses to let Roman's violent world rot her own soul. And amazingly, the kingpin is actually impressed. He agrees. It is such a powerful moment. The lesson is simple but heavy. Keeping your humanity intact is always worth more than the cheap thrill of watching your enemy bleed. He asks how she is really holding up. She looks away, finally admitting that she feels like she is drowning every single day. She finally drops the tough act. She tells him that waking up every day feels like being tossed into an ice bath, having to remember the betrayal all over again. And here is where the mobster breaks your heart. His cold mask slips. He tells her the pain never actually gets smaller. You just have to build a stronger cage around it to survive. It is such a brutal thing to say, but she actually smiles. They are not a gangster and a victim anymore. They are just two broken people sitting in the wreckage. She asks him why he saved her at that fancy party. He admits he looked in her eyes and saw his own exhausting, paranoid survival instinct staring back. It is a bitter pill to swallow, guys. Trauma is an incredibly cruel teacher, but it forces you to forge a mind made of absolute iron. Let us hit pause again, and really look at what Roman does next. He points out how messed up human nature is. Most people catch their partner cheating and end up begging the liar to stay. But Elena chose to walk away into the cold. She whispers that she feels completely shattered inside, but Roman flips the script for her. He says real courage is not feeling strong. It is walking out the door when your own heart is screaming at you to stay and fix it. Then, he makes a heartbreaking confession. He knew his own partner was toxic for years, but he just chose to look the other way because it was easier. And that hits right in the gut. If you tape over the warning lights on your dashboard, you cannot act surprised when the whole engine eventually explodes. You have to face the ugly truth early. Elena matches his honesty. She maps out exactly how her marriage died not all at once, but in this slow freeze until they were just two ghosts haunting the same house. When they step out of the cafe, the whole vibe of the movie has shifted. They are bonded now. Two survivors refusing to play the victim anymore, and you can see him slip right back into mob boss mode, checking the street. Sitting alone in the driver's seat, Elena realized the crazy irony of fate. She just found peace by talking to a live phone buzzes. It is victim. Life never gives you a break, right? But here is the takeaway. Sometimes, the only person who can truly endure darkness is someone who has been living in the shadows their entire life. The screen glows with death-trick messages. The guy is completely falling apart, begging her to be his emotional punching bag again. Just a month ago, a text like this would have sent Elena into total spiral. But tonight, she looks at it like you would look at garbage on the sidewalk. She wipes him out of her reality entirely. Yet Roman gave her the backbone she needed to finally cut the cord. For the first time in forever, she goes home, closes her eyes, and actually sleeps. That is the magic that cancer out completely, if you ever want your body to heal. Meanwhile, the movie cuts to Victor, and karma is hitting him like a freight train. His company is tanking. His fake friends are vanishing, and his world is burning. We end this sequence watching Victor totally suffocate in his own mess. He is trapped in his fancy penthouse, frantically calling everyone he knows, but they all send him straight to voicemail. That is the thing about building a life on lies. The second the pressure drops, the whole house of cards caves in. Across the city, Roman is watching this destruction on a monitor with zero emotion. He is not even enjoying it. It is just a routine cleanup for him. But here is where the plot twists the knife. Never back a rat into a corner. Digging through his ruined files, Victor stumbles onto a hidden ledger. A tiny thread that connects Roman to the underground. Just like that, the broken ex-husband is holding a match, and he is standing right next to the mob boss's powder keg. Everything is about to blow. Let us pause the movie right here and just look at this guy. You and I are sitting in the dark, watching Victor sweat through his shirt in this cheap, filthy motel room. He gasps for air, like a dying man. Clutching a stolen folder of mob secrets under a flickering yellow light bulb, the poor guy is terrified, but his ego is still feeding him this wild fantasy. He actually thinks taking down the apex predator makes him the king of the jungle again. We can see his hand shaking. For Mile is a classic tragedy. Really, people who are blinded by their own pride never see the cliff until they are already falling. Once you let pure spite take the wheel, you are just driving your straight into brick wall. The lesson here? Never let your ego write checks your survival instincts cannot cash. Look at the sheer panic on his face as rain smashes against the glass. Victor is backed into corner, his shaking finger hovering over the phone. He stares at those stolen ledgers on the dirty mattress, genuinely believing these papers will save his life. But let us be honest, desperation makes you blind, that he cannot sense the monster standing right outside his door. He dials. His heart is pounding so hard you can almost hear it through the screen. 1 ring, 2 rings. A federal agent answers. It is tragic because panic always convinces the prey they are the hunter, right before the trap snaps shut. Sometimes the most painful lesson in life is realizing you have already lost before the game even begins. Just as the operator asks for an extension, the wooden door blasts open in a shower of splinters. Victor scrambles backward in the peeling wallpaper, looking exactly like a deer caught in the headlights. 2 massive enforcers step inside, followed closely by Roman. Now hit pause again. Watch how this guy operates. Roman looks at the terrified man and the scattered evidence without even blinking. He casually picks up the dangling phone and softly tells the federal agent they have the wrong number. You have to feel a little bad for Victor, playing checkers while Roman plays chess. The big takeaway for all of us? Real power never has to shout. Always pay close attention to the quietest person in the room, because they usually hold all the cards. Roman hangs up with a slow, chilling calmness that makes your skin crawl. His men do not pull their guns. They just stand by the broken door, using their sheer size to suffocate the room. You can feel the air getting sucked right out of Victor's lungs. Roman walks to the bed, looking at his stolen files with a amused smirk. When he brings up the break-in, Victor crumbles. He starts babbling, trying to blame his terrible choices on his recent divorce. Roman coldly recites the facts, shattering the excuse in seconds. It is brutal to watch a man get mental dismantled like this. The undeniable truth is that challenging a shark in its own water is just asking to get eaten. Trying to outsmart someone entirely out of your league is always the absolute fastest way to ruin your life. Roman stares at this broken man, asks if he actually planned to give those files to the feds. Victor is hyperventilating, begging to just rewind the clock. Then Roman twists the knife, bring up Victor cheating on his wife. Desperate. Victor tries to flip the script, crying about how Roman destroyed his business. First, watch Roman's face here. He views ruining a company as a simple penalty for disrespect. But stealing ledgers to threaten his personal freedom? That crosses a sacred line in the mind of a kingpin. You almost pity Victor for failing to understand the rules of the dangerous game he chose to play. The ultimate lesson is so simple. Never start a massive war unless you are fully prepared to watch your own house burn entirely to the ground. Let us analyze this scene together. Roman steps closer, looking like the Grim Reaper in a suit. He tells Victor the only reason is still promise made to Elena. Victor visibly sags with relief, thinking his former wife's name is a magic shield. But wait for it. Roman softly explains that while he promised not to leave any bruises, protecting his empire was never off the table. It is a brilliant, cruel loophole. His enforcer snatches the ledgers. Victor tries one last pathetic bluff about having digital backups, but Roman shuts it down instantly. His crew already wiped every computer Victor owns. It is a bitter pill to swallow. When you are completely trapped by someone who owns the entire board, total transparency is really your only chance at making it out alive. Roman looks at the weeping mess on the floor, deeply disgusted by a man who thought he was a mastermind. The henchman steps into the rain, leaving a dead silence. Roman drags a broken chair across the wet carpet and sits, towering over his prey. This is the killing blow without a single bullet. He gives Victor until sunrise to vanish forever. Victor instinctively tries to haggle, but Roman hits him with a stare so cold it could freeze water. He lays down an absolute boundary about never coming near Elena again. Victor frantically nods, his ego entirely shattered into dust. You really have to feel the sheer terror in the room. When a lethal predator intentionally leaves the cage door wide open, you never stop to negotiate. You just start running and you never look back. Roman paused, stepping into the storm, to drop one last nightmare on Victor. He calmly mentions that bankrupting him was merely the appetizer. The real torture starts tomorrow. For the rest of his miserable life, Victor will jump at every shadow. He will spend decades checking his rearview mirror, waiting for a bullet Roman might never send. Roman smooths out his jacket, delivering the ultimate curse. The bitterest part is not getting murdered. It is knowing you have to exist as a terrified ghost. Roman walks in the rain, leaving Victor completely paralyzed on the floor. It is such a brutal truth to swallow. When you betray someone who operates 5 steps ahead, the ultimate price you pay is losing your peace of mind for the rest of your natural life. The sun rises and Victor's a ghost, fleeing town just as ordered. Now let us shift the camera to Elena. She is trying to piece her life back together. Look at her plain apartment. There is no fancy furniture, but the space is entirely hers. She finds comfort in simple routines, proving that a quiet, empty room is infinitely better than a golden cage built on lies. You can see her finally starting to breathe again. But trauma is a sticky trap, isn't it? Right at midnight, her phone lights up the dark room. The screen flashes with Roman's name. You can feel the absolute dread washing over her, mixed with a very twisted sense of longing. She takes a deep, shaky breath, and despite knowing exactly how dangerous the fire is, she still makes the choice to pick up the phone. When he speaks, his voice is genuinely shocking. Roman sounds totally exhausted, dropping that untouchable mob boss persona. It is a highly manipulative trick. By showing a crack of vulnerability, he instantly hooks her deep caregiver instincts. She cannot help but ask if he is okay. After a heavy, calculated silence, he drops the news that her former husband is gone for good. Watch Elena's face. She is drowning in a massive wave of relief, but simultaneously terrified of what he did to make that happen. When she pushes for details, Roman brushes it off, calling it a simple disagreement over paperwork. You have to understand that poking a sleeping bear never ends well for the prey. If you walk near the edge of a dangerous cliff, you must deeply respect the fall. Stick with me to unpack this pure manipulation. Roman plays innocent, acting like ruining a man's life was just logistics. He lowers his voice, reminding her he kept his promise. 0 blood was spilled. Elena processes the terrifying reality that he shattered a human mind without leaving a single physical bruise. And her response? She whispers a soft thank you. It is the heartbreaking reality of a trauma bond. Then Roman sighs, mentions his own loneliness, and casually asks her for coffee. Here is the craziest lesson about human nature. Even the absolute most ruthless and calculating monsters still desperately need a steady source of validation. They need someone to look them in the eyes and tell them they are completely justified. Let us hit pause for a second, guys. Look at Elena sitting there in the dark like a trapped mouse. Roman drops the ultimate emotional bait, telling her she's the only person who sees him as a normal guy. Watch her hand. Watch her hands. You and I can see her knuckles turning white. Every survival instinct she has is screaming at her to run from this monster. But loneliness is it rots your defenses just as fast as an actual threat. She actually thinks this mobster is the only soul who gets her trauma. So, she agrees to grab a drink. The tragedy here. Sometimes we are so desperate to be understood, we will willingly hand the keys to our own cage right back to the devil. She is walking back in the trap, and she does not even know it. So here they are, sitting in broad daylight like a couple of normal people on a coffee date. Look at Roman playing the exhausted, misunderstood guy. They are talking about books, of all things, just pretending the blood on his hands does not exist. But watch what happens when his phone goes off. It is like a switch flips behind his eyes, that soft, tired look vanishes, and the cold, dead stare of a kingpin takes over. He steps away into the bright sun to handle his criminal empire, leaving her sitting there with her little illusion shattered. It is hilarious, really, how much we want to believe we can change someone. But here is the hard truth you need to remember. You can dress a wolf up in a nice suit and take him to a cafe. But the second he smells meat, the teeth are coming out. Now, watch Elena's face closely. Roman goes totally stiff, his face locking down like a vault. He tells her he has to leave, his voice completely dead. And then he drops the bomb. Serafina is dead. A fatal car crash. He describes the wreckage like he is reading a grocery list. You can see the panic hit Elena's chest. She stammers out that she does not believe it was an accident. And honestly, she is right. The life lesson here is pretty dark, but it will keep you breathing. When you are swimming in the same pool as a ruthless power, Hungry predator, there is no such thing as a random coincidence. Roman just turns and walks away, leaving her suffocating in a bubble of pure panic. She knows what he is, and now she knows exactly what he is capable of. Let us look at the wreckage he leaves behind. Elena is entirely frozen in shock. The woman who wrecked her life is just gone, totally wiped off the board days before everything was legally final. Look at her hands shaking. She is trying so hard to build up this well of denials to let this just be a tragic car accident. But you and I have to be honest here. Our gut feelings are almost never wrong. Did you see that dead, lizard-like stare he gave her? He knew exactly how that crash happened. She spends the rest of the day walking around like a ghost. By the time night falls, the news is blasting the horrific details right into her living room. The lesson? When your instincts scream that the monster is in the room, do not try to convince yours it is just a shadow. The glow from the television makes her look sick, doesn't it? The news anchors are trying to sell this as a simple tragedy, just bad weather and bad luck. But phone ring doesn't tell the truth. Her phone rings and is him, Roman. She stares at that screen like it is a venomous snake about to strike. Desperate for a lifeline, she calls her lawyer and begs for the absolute truth about Roman and his criminal ties. And what does the lawyer do? Dead silence. Not a single word. That right there is terrifying. It brings us to a harsh but crucial reality about the world. When the people you pay to protect you suddenly lose their voices, you have walked blind into a slaughterhouse. She is completely alone now, and the walls are closing in fast. The lawyer finally spits out a warning, so chilling it makes Elena freeze entirely. She tells her to stop digging before she gets herself killed, and then just hangs up the phone. Click. Look at the way Elena curls into herself. Every fiber of her being is begging her to pack a bag, run away, and forget Roman ever existed. But here is the sick twist of fate. Instead of running, she clings to that fake, gentle version of him from the cafe. She wants to believe he is the tired guy reading books, not the monster blowing up cars. The lesson here is enough to break your heart. The most dangerous people in the world do not always look like villains. Sometimes they know exactly how to mimic kindness, and we fall for it because we are so desperate for a safe place to rest. I want you to really see what has happened to her mind right now. Up until this point, she has only dealt with the mask he wears. She felt sorry for the guy, completely ignoring the fact that he ruins for a living. Then her phone lights up again. He wants to talk. She hits call. It is absolute sabotage. She straight up asks him if he murdered his own wife, her voice shaking so hard it might break. But honestly, you have to respect her for it. The truth is, if you want to survive a nightmare, you have to drag your biggest, darkest fears right out in the open and stare at them. Roman answers her, of course. But his denial is so flat and empty. It is like listening to a machine. He is not even trying to sound innocent. She is pushing him to crack and show some real human emotion. But Roman is a brick wall. He repeats his denial without a single change in his breathing. She loses it, screaming at him, asking why everyone says he is a ruthless killer if he is so innocent. He just brushes it off, saying people always make up stories about powerful men. She is completely falling apart, crying that she cannot handle his crazy world. He tries to tell her it is not a big deal, but she is finally waking up. And here is the golden rule for situations like this. Never ever let your feelings for someone blind you to the very real danger they put you in. You cannot love a shark into being a dolphin. She hangs up, demanding he stay out of her life forever. Let us rewind that last part and watch it together. Does not get mad when she tried to cut him off. He just breathes calmly and hits her with the most devastating line of the whole movie. He tells her that if he actually wanted his wife dead, no police officer in the world would have found a single clue. Wow. Look at Elena physically sink in the floorist. She asked why he would even sing to comfort her at all. He just wants her to know exactly how powerful he is. Sometimes, the most terrifying weapon someone can use against you is just the cold, Quran's just the cold, unfiltered truth. Hearing exactly what a monster is capable of will break you faster than any lie. She drops the phone, totally shattered. The sun comes up. The police release the autopsy report, and it turns out Serafina was completely intoxicated. The crash was a tragic self-inflicted disaster. No hitmen, no planted bombs. Elena reads the news and her hands are shaking violently. It is a bitter irony, isn't it? The lesson here is that our own personal demons will usually destroy us long before the actual bad guys get a chance to. Elena thought she would feel this huge wave of relief knowing Roman did not pull the trigger. But instead, she just feels completely empty. Sure, he did not orchestrate this specific car crash, but that does not change the fact that he is still a cold-blooded shark circling her waters. The danger has not passed at all. Even though he did not kill his wife, Roman is still the guy who destroyed her husband without blinking an eye. And yet, look at Elena. It is like watching a car crash in slow motion. She is actually thinking about calling him again. For a solid week, she paces around her house, fighting this sick addiction to the guy. He never's the way he looked at her. He never treated her like a victim. He looked at her like she was strong enough to survive his world. It is a messed up truth. But sometimes the most toxic person in your life is the only one actually sees your hidden strength. Just when she thinks she has finally escaped the madness, 2 weeks go by, and her doorbell rings at the dead of night. The silence shatters. The nightmare is walking right back in. Stick with me for this final blow, because this is where everything she thought she knew gets burned to the ground. She opens the door, and Roman is standing in the shadows, his face completely unreadable. He hands her a thick, heavy folder. You can see Elena can barely breathe as she opens it. She throws up this tiny emotional shield, but it is useless. She starts reading the bank statements, and her heart just stops. Serafina was not just sleeping with Elena's husband. She was stealing millions of dollars from Roman's criminal syndicate. The ultimate lesson. The person who sleeps right next to you, the one who has complete access to your life, is the one who can cut you the deepest. The betrayal was coming from inside the house the whole time. Look at her hands shaking while she stares at those bank statements. Pause the movie right here, guys. Roman is just sitting there, completely motionless, watching her entire world burn to the ground. This was not just some cheap, impulsive affair. The two of them were actually laundering money to build an elaborate escape pod. And the most heartbreaking part? Elena barely manages to choke out the question, asking if her own husband knew about the stolen funds. Roman just nods. He knew this for 3 whole days and just sat in the dark, waiting to pull the pin on her life. Here is the brutal lesson we all need to learn. When a predator goes completely silent after a betrayal, you are not waiting for the storm. The roof has already caved in, and you are just standing in the dust. The camera zooms out to capture the sick genius of this entire scenario. Roman looks like an apex predator who just cornered his prey, and he casually admits he played dumb on purpose. He handed them the exact amount of rope they needed to hang them. That big, dramatic public confrontation earlier, pure theater. A choreographed flex to completely shatter Elena's illusions. Her husband did not just cheat on a biological whim, he actually weaponized their marriage to fund a new life with another woman. Roman did not ruin her life. He just flipped the switch on the trap her own husband built. It is a bitter pill to swallow, but here is the truth. Never mistake a partner's calculated, systemic manipulation for a temporary lapse in judgment. They know exactly where to slip the knife. Today, you and I are going to unpack this tragedy together. Watch Elena gasping for air that is a full-blown panic attack. No acting required. When she finally asks Roman about his wife Serafina's final moments, his reaction is genuinely terrifying. He admits he cornered her, just to flex his up-control. And Serafina? Her fatal mistake was laughing right in the face of his shattered ego, swearing she would tear his criminal empire down to the studs. 12 hours later. She is pulled from a heap of twisted metal. Roman does not even blink. He swears he did not cut the brakes, but he has absolute zero remorse that she is gone. Listen to me on this one. When you back a truly dangerous parent in a corner and bruise their pride, you are basically writing your own obituary. Roman just sits there, clinically breaking down the violent math of their world. In his twisted head, Serafina was the attacker, and husband Victor was the enabler, and her death was just balancing the books. He actually gives Elena permission to hate him, which is just a masterful, manipulative way to play the victim. But watch what happens when she grabs the ledgers and demands to know why he is doing this. His armor cracks. He looks right at her and says she is the only person on Earth who sees the human being buried underneath the monster. Talk about an emotional, fatal strike. He is wiring a trauma bond right in front of us. The irony of it all is just sick. The certified psychopath is the only one telling her the absolute truth, while the man she married was stabbing her in the back. You can practically see the exact second Elena's entire reality snaps in half. She suddenly realized the other woman is a deadly parasite, while Roman, this apex predator, is somehow her only safe harbor. But pay close attention when that deadbolt clicks locked. instead of freezing up like most people would. She turns right around and faces her captor. Her nervous system is absolute frying. Her voice is shaking like a leaf, but she demands the raw, unfiltered truth. She refuses his fake, polite protection. She wants to see the monster in broad daylight. This is the hardest part about surviving total emotional destruction. You have to throw away every single comfort and lie you ever told yours. If you're going to dance with a lethal predator, you better learn the rhythm of their madness. A suffocating silence hangs over the phone line, stretching out the tension. For the very first time, we see Roman hesitate, genuinely wondering if she has the guts to cross his boundaries. Elena is silently weeping, her body screaming at her to run. But she violently overrides her own survival instincts. She openly admits she is terrified, yet still locks in a face meeting at dawn. She drops the phone in the pile of forged bank records and sits in the wreckage. It is a stunning, cinematic pivot. She goes from being the clueless victim of a narcissist to the ruthless architect of her own destiny in 10 seconds flat. Avoidance only makes the nightmare worse, folks. Sometimes, walking straight in the jaws of the beast is the only way to break the psychological curse. Now we watch Elena voluntarily walk in the absolute worst part of town. She has finally figured out that playing defense is just going to get her killed. She shows up early, shaking so hard she has to bury her hands deep in her coat pockets. The air feels so heavy into the moral gray area. Right on the dot, Roman rolls up in a pitch-black car, but hit pause for a second. Where is the terrifying mob boss? He steps out looking completely hollowed out, carrying the crushing physical weight of his own sins. He does not look like a killer. He looks like a terminal patient who has not slept in a decade. The takeaway here is profound. The moment you finally decide to rip up your victim card and fight back, your entire internal world goes to war. Get a close look at Roman's face here. The toxic lifestyle is literally eating him alive. He has these massive bruises under his eyes from chronic insomnia. But the second he spots Elena, all that icy criminal armor just melts right off. He chokes out a rough, exhausted expression of gratitude. Elena's heart so hard she cannot even speak, so she just gives this tiny, terrified nod. They slide into pitch-black corner booth, hiding from the rest of the world. Her voice is cracking with anxiety, but she draws a hard line in the sand. No more lies. Roman just sinks back in the leather, staring at her with this desperate, sickening obsession. This shift in power is absolutely wild. When a certified monster voluntarily drops his shield, you are watching the birth of a fatal bond. Roman fishes around for where to begin. His void does knocks of buried pain. Elena does not give him an inch. She coldly tells him to start with his darkest sins. He takes a breath and rips the bandage off a childhood of brutal poverty, where playing by the rules only guaranteed you got crushed. His dad worked him into an early grave, and his mom was broken by the daily grind. Right there, that is the exact origin story of his madness, a kid, burning with rage at a rigged game. He realized that morals were just chains for the poor, so he traded his soul for apps full of cash. By 25, he owned the entire criminal underground. It is a harsh truth to swallow. The most terrifying villains are usually just traumatized kids who figured out the world was broken. He locks eyes with her and drops every last ounce of that fake billionaire charm. He's out his entire criminal empire, piece by ugly piece. All those fancy charity galas were just smokescreen for mass extortion, broken bones, and systemic corruption. Fear and violence. Elena absorbs this horrific confession without shedding a single tear, looks him dead in the eye, and calls him exactly what he is, a monster. Roman does not even flinch. He just nods, no excuses, no sob stories to justify the blood on his hands. He tells her straight up that if she wants to stay close, she has to accept this ugly reality without flinching. Stick with me, as this is where the psychology gets wild. When a villain hands you their rap sheet without a single excuse, it is the purest form of honesty. The tension in this booth is so thick you could cut it with a chainsaw. Elena finally asks the million-dollar question about the cut brakes on his wife's car. A tiny muscle twitches in Roman's jaw. He leans in closer and delivers a truth so cold it stops your heart. He swears he had not rigged that car crash, but he admits, completely deadpan, that he fully intended to murder him. The sheer weight of that confession hits Elena like a freight train. He stares at his empty hands, almost annoyed that fate stole his revenge, and dares Elena to call him a psychopath. Every alarm bell in her head is screaming at her to run for the door. But here is the sick irony of the human condition. Sometimes a confession of pure, Homicidal madness creates a terrifying respect right along's absolute panic. Let's pause and look at this twisted setup. Elena is staring him down, trying to figure out why a cold-blooded predator suddenly needs her approval. The lights are dim, and Roman is completely dropping his guard. He actually tells her she's the first person in 10 years to see him as a human being instead of a weapon. Elena is projecting all her own past betrayals right onto him, building this warped mutual empathy. She tests the waters, demanding to know if she can just walk away safely. Roman bows his head and swears she can leave with zero consequences. But here's the bitter reality about control. The darkest kind of dominance isn't locking someone in a room. It's handing them the key. Knowing their own broken heart will keep them from ever turning the lock. The vibe instantly turns to ice when Roman lays down the brutal truth. He tells her straight up that stepping into his world means there's no going back. If she stays, his enemies will flag her as his biggest weakness and put a target on her back. He actually tells her to calculate her chance of dying before she decides. Elena is literally shaking, but her mind flashes back to her old life, where she was just a passive ghost suffocating under polite lies. Instead of running for the hills, she accepts truth. It's a harsh truth to swallow, but sometimes we'd rather burn our perfectly safe, fake lives to the ground just to feel something that is dangerously, undeniably real. Elena looks right into the eyes of a killer and tells him she isn't playing make-believe. She's finally stopped lying to hers. Roman actually looks confused that she's so calmly accepting a death sentence. She tries to draw a hard line, demanding he keep his criminal empire completely separate from her life. But Roman hits her with the cold logistics. He can surround her with guards, but the rest of the world will permanently brand her as a mobster's willing partner. Without missing a beat, Elena accepts the public shame. Stick with me here, because this is the tragic part. You can build all the mental walls you want to hide from the chaos, but you can never control how the world judges you for the monsters you choose to love. We really need to unpack what's happening right here. Look at Roman. The guy is usually a walking fortress, but under these warm lights, he's practically melting. For one single hour, the mob boss vanishes. They aren't talking about hits or betrayals, just whispering about old books and running away. It's crazy how talking about absolutely nothing can bind two shattered people together. By the time they walk outside, everything has shifted. They're literally building a bomb. Roman walks her to her car with the smooth grace of a hunting wolf. It breaks your heart to realize how the human mind works. Sometimes the exact person who's most like to destroy your life is the only one who makes you feel like you're finally home. When Roman asks if he can see her again, Elena doesn't even hesitate. She says yes, and you can see the relief wash over his stone-cold face. But later, alone in her car, her hands are shaking so hard she can barely grip the wheel. It isn't exactly fear make her tremble. It's the terrifying realization that she just walked off a cliff in the pitch black. For the next 3 weeks, they play house. Coffee on Tuesdays, dinner on Fridays. They completely ignore the fact that he runs a violent empire. It's the ultimate form of denial. We all need to hear this, loud and clear. Closing your eyes to the massive, screaming warning signs in your life never makes the danger disappear. It only guarantees you won't see the crash coming until it ruins you. The phone rings late at night, shattering the quiet in her room. Her friend Maya is frantic on the other end. She tells Elena that the whole city is talking, calling her a clueless pawn dating a ruthless sociopath. Maya warns her she's going to end up dead just like Serafina. That name hits Elena like a physical punch to the chest. She grips the phone, desperately lying to herself, insisting they're just normal friends. But Maya isn't having it. She brutally reminds Elena that crime lords don't have friends. They only have property to manage and problems to bury. Elena tries to fight back, but she knows she's losing. Real friends are the ones who will drag your worst mistakes into the harsh daylight, risking your anger just to save your life. Just look at her sitting there alone in the dark. It's a painfully clear picture of someone active destroying their own life. She knows she's playing with absolute fire, but she just can't walk away. Roman is the only guy who looks at all her broken pieces and doesn't ask her to fix them. Suddenly her phone lights up. It's Roman. He wants dinner tomorrow because they need to talk. We all know that phrase is the kiss of death. Her stomach completely falls out as she types a reply, her thumb shaking over the send button. It's a brutal reality check one. Trauma bonds can feel exactly like true love. But if your relationship is built on shared pain and unhealed scars, you're just setting the stage for a spectacular disaster. Roman replies almost instantly. He promised everything is fine but says they have to do the face-to-face, and he's sending a car at 7. Elena drops her phone, sheer panic gripping her throat. The next evening, a massive black sedan rolls up to her sidewalk. She slides into the back seat, trapped in deads with an enforcer who looks like he eats glass for breakfast. 20 agonizing minutes later, they pull up to an unmarked door in a dark alley. Inside, Roman is waiting under dim amber lights, wearing a perfect suit and holding all the power in the room. You can't ignore what's happening right now. The moment your date night requires a bodyguard and a secret entrance, your innocence is gone. You've officially bought a ticket to the nightmare. Roman leads her into a private back room that feels like a tomb. The shadows are long, and the air is thick enough to choke on. The absolute second that heavy wooden door clicks shut, Elena demands to know what's going on. Roman tells her to sit down, but he keeps pacing. His usual cold, untouchable mask is completely shattered. There's actual sweat shining on his forehead. He takes a shaky breath and drops the bomb. 3 days ago, a rival crew tried to take him out. 4 bullets smashed right through his office window in the middle of the afternoon. It's a massive wake-up call for both of them. It doesn't matter how high you build your walls or how scary your reputation gets. A life bought with violence will eventually kick down your door to collect its bloody debt. Roman made it out alive, but his best guy caught a bullet instead. His jaw is locked tight, and you can see a man who's finally been pushed to the absolute breaking point. The shooters were from Serafina's family, kicking off a bloody war that won't end until there are bodies in the ground. Elena grabs the edge of the heavy table, her knuckles stark white, and reminds him he swore her death was just a tragic accident. He just nods, softly explaining that grief doesn't care about the truth, it only wants revenge. Then he delivers the final, crushing blow. Because the city knows she's with him, Elena is now on the hit list. It's a heartbreak reality we all have to face. Our worst decisions never just burn us. They drag everyone we love right into the fire. The air in the room suddenly feels like 1,000 pounds. Roman casually reveals that an invisible team of gunmen has been tailing Elena for weeks, supposedly to keep her safe. He claims that real security means knowing her every single move. Feel the trap snapping shut around her. Her choices are down to 2. Disappear forever, or stay and trade her entire life for a cage made of armed guards. She begs him to tell her if there's any other way. He doesn't even blink. His silence screams the answer. You and I need to really look at this moment. We take our everyday freedom for granted. But the second you hand your independence over to the chaos of a toxic partner, you're throwing away the pen that writes the rest of your life story. This right here is the turning point of the whole tragedy. Elena is completely falling apart. She screams at him, demand to know why he hid this living nightmare from her weeks ago, back before she fell in love with him. Roman just stares at her like she's his only lifeline. He quietly says he cared too much to lock her in a violent cage without giving her the choice to leave. The manipulation hits her so hard it's like a physical slap across the face. She spins around and bolts straight for the door. Roman doesn't even twitch. It's a brutal lesson in love. Real devotion is never a heavy iron chain tying someone to your personal demons. It's having the raw courage to leave the front door wide open when your house goes up in flames. Alright, hit pause right here. Look at this scene. We follow Elena stumbling out onto the freezing asphalt, neon signs blurring into a messy smear, while a massive panic attack completely short-circuits her brain. She is literally suffocating against a dirty brick wall. The irony? Right when she finds a twisted kind of comfort with a mobster, she has to choose between saving her own skin or sticking by the kingpin. The heavy door groans open, and Roman steps out, hovering in the shadows. He actually apologizes for dragging her into his personal bloodbath. But watch her face now. She wipes her tears, drops the helps victim act, and snaps that she walked into this fire totally on her own. Here is a tough lesson for us all. Owning up to your absolute worst choices is the only way you actually start to grow up. They are just standing there, frozen under these awful flickering street lamps, letting this heavy silence crush them. But when Elena finally speaks, her voice does not shake at all. She demands a minute to process this absolute train wreck, and Roman just nods. Knowing her survival instincts are kicking in, she drops the big question: how long until the rival crew shows up? You can actually see the guy break inside as his face hardens. 48 hours, he tells her. The clock is officially ticking. He steps up, promising to pay for her escape or literally start a war if she stays. But Elena cuts him right off, locking onto his eyes with zero hesitation. The lesson here is simple. When life slides a ticking clock across the table, you can't just hide. You have to look the nightmare dead in the eye and hold your ground. Roman drops this promise like a king ready to burn down the world, swearing that anyone who touches her will drown in blood. Logically, any sane person would sprint in the opposite direction. But here is the sick, tragic irony of it all. His violent threat wraps around her like a cozy blanket. It is the classic trap of falling for the guy pulling the strings. For 2 whole days, she paces her apartment, tearing her own mind apart. Running away is the smart, safe move. But as the sun goes down, it hits her hard. She has spent her entire miserable away from things that scare her. This brings us to a harsh truth most of us learn way too late. The biggest threat in life is not some monster chasing you through the dark. It is the paralyzing fear that stops you from actually living. Let us rewind and unpack this together, because this is the exact second the trap snaps shut. Elena finally stops lying to herself. She picks up the phone and calls this absolute narcissist of a kingpin, and her surrender is total. When she whispers that she is staying, the silence on the line is deafening. He gives her one last fake warning, a totally pathetic illusion of a choice, but her defenses are completely gone. She fires back that nothing real comes cheap, throwing herself headfirst into this nightmare. It is crazy to watch, but it points to a deeply uncomfortable truth about human nature. We will almost always choose the wild, screaming chaos of a massive storm over the miserable, soul-crushing safety of sitting alone in an empty cage. The sickness of this relationship hits a whole new level right here. Our guy does not negotiate. He hands down a dark, absolutely stay. He owns her completely. You know her heart is beating out of her chest, but what does she do? She just nods and goes along with it. Roman drops one last tear all the cards. Within an hour, 2 massive, heavily armed goons just magically appear in her hallway. They are the walking, breathing proof that her normal life is officially dead and buried. Watching this rapid downward spiral teaches us something incredibly dark about how we adapt. Sometimes, throwing her straight in the deepest, most violent waters is the only way a broken person can ever figure out how to swim. These goons pack her up like they are moving furniture. Gripping just one tiny bag, Elena gets swallowed up by this massive black sedan, heading straight for his bulletproof tower. This place is a fortress of glass and steel where the guy literally watches everything. They drag her up to the 20th floor, and there he is. Now, watch his face when he sees her pathetic little bag. The scary mob boss act melts away in this totally fake, calculated warmth. He just smiles and thanks her for showing up. It is classic toxic behavior, rewarding her surrender with a crumb of affection. And it leaves us with a pretty miserable life lesson. When death is knocking at the door, just being in the same room is the only kind of loyalty a paranoid person can actually understand. You and I need to look closely at this next move, because it is an absolute masterclass in messing with someone's head. Instead of giving her a hug, this guy drags her into his paranoid control room. He literally plays security footage of masked killers creeping around her old apartment. He is weaponizing her own fear, showing her that she is now the giant, bleeding target on his back. The sheer weight of that guilt crushes Elena, forcing her to lie entirely and him stay alive. It is sick, but it points out a really tragic joke about being human. The people we care about the most always end up being our biggest, most dangerous weak spots, but ironically, they are also the only things keeping us from turning into total monsters. Just look at how fast she gets used to the madness. When Elena asks what the plan is, the guy drops the nice guy routine in a height. His voice goes ice cold as he lays out a straight-up massacre. Any norm person would run screaming for the hills. But Elena is so deep in this twisted romance that she just stands there. He even gives her the chance to look away, but she refuses. She stares dead at the photos of the 3 men he is about to butcher. It is a really dark, messed up moment. But it hits on a basic survival instinct we all share. Sometimes staring right at the ugly, bloody truth of a bad situation actually gives you more peace of mind than hiding inside a pretty, fragile lie. He stands there calmly mapping out the hit. These rivals actually believe their family name makes them bulletproof, and his massive ego just can't handle that. He promises to tear their world apart just to prove he is still the king of the street. Anyone else would be frozen in pure terror, but what does Elena do? She steps closer to this killer, and just softly asks him to please survive the night. It is completely unscripted, and you can see it literally short-circuit his brain. The guy is a total sociopath, but he freezes. It proves a really fascinating point about the walls we build. A single unexpected drop of real, messy, and human affection can easily punch right through the thickest emotional armor a person can wear. So he walks out the door to go commit murder, leaving her totally alone in this giant, empty penthouse. Elena has officially crossed the point of no return here. She is just accepting the bloodshed as the price of admission for staying alive. Fast forward a few hours, and her panic violently jerks her wake. It is 4 a.m, and the penthouse feels like a freezing high-altitude tomb. She wanders over to the bulletproof glass, hugging her as she stares down at the normal, clueless people sleeping in the city below. The isolation is just suffocating. It forces us to swallow a really heavy truth. Every choice has a price tag, and a lot of times, the final cost of surviving a nightmare is losing your peace of mind forever. We need to hit pause again and really look at this, because the mental toll here is absolutely brutal. Picture standing in a glass tower, wide awake, knowing the guy you are falling for is out there painting the town red. Elena is fighting just to breathe normally, but her hands will not stop shaking. 4 agonizing hours drag by before the elevator finally dings. He walks out and his expensive suit is completely soaked in blood. But the second he actually sees her standing there, his whole terrifying tough guy act just falls apart. He sags against the wall. It forces us to confront a really miserable fact of life. Sitting alone in the dark, waiting in total silence for someone you love to come home, is the worst kind of torture you can endure. Just watch how this messed up reunion plays out in the dim light. Our mob boss waves off his guards, leaving just the two of them alone again. Elena scans the massive red soaking through his shirt, and the only thing she asks is if he is hurt. He just clenches his jaw, plays it off, and coldly tells her the blood belongs to the other guys. A normal person would be sprinting for the fire escape right now. But Elena, she gets this huge wave of relief. She is just terrifyingly glad that he is breathing. He has totally won her over. It points out a really creepy irony. Sometimes when your entire life falls apart, sometimes the absolute most dangerous monster in the room becomes the only thing that makes you feel safe. Let us pause the movie right here, guys, because this suffocating hallway scene is pure psychological thriller gold. Elena just will not drop it. Her morbid curiosity is pushing her to find out exactly how this exhausted syndicate boss operates. And Roman? The adrenaline crash has hit him hard, but he still lays out his twisted methodology. He did not just shoot his enemies. That is amateur hour. Instead, he whispered the addresses of their safe houses and their kids' daily routines into their ears, completely destroying their mental security. Think about that for a second. Pulling a trigger is the cheapest trick in the book. But holding a person's entire reality hostage? That is the absolute, terrifying pinnacle of human control, and he knows it. So he admits to planting a mental virus so nasty that his rivals basically ate their own boss alive. And Elena? She does not even blink at this grotesque mastermind stuff, in a wild twist of fate. She locks eyes with him and actually thanks the guy for keeping her breathing. Watch his reaction, guys. The cold-blooded sociopath totally freezes up, completely paralyzed because a woman finally gave him genuine validation. She reaches out, her fingers gently brushing the nasty bruise over his eye, and he just stops working. She sits the big bad wolf down on a stool to patch him up, and here is the bitter truth that hits right in the chest. Even the most violent, terrifying monsters who run the underworld just want a gentle hand to touch their deepest scars. Look at the screen right now, because you and I are watching a trauma bond permanently cement itself. Elena is cleaning out his cuts with laser focus, and our narcissistic mob boss is staring at her like he has never seen a human being before. He realizes her fear is completely gone. She even admits out loud that she knows she should be running for her life. But somehow, she has flipped the script in her head, turning the city's biggest threat into her own personal bodyguard. When he tries to puff up his chest, she shuts him down cold. She reminds him he already offered her a way out, and that is the crazy irony of trust in a broken world. Trust does not mean you are safe from danger. It just means you pick which monster holds the gun when the lights go out. Pay close attention to this heavy, traumatic silence choking the room. Elena finally breaks it, desperately trying to justify the madness. She looks right at him and says that sure, he's a violent criminal, but he is never mean to her. Let us just process that. In her twisted survival logic, that tiny difference is everything. Roman then pulls this classic manipulative move, dropping his head and warning her that loving him is a deadly mistake. He is totally eating up his own tragic villain act. But she refuses to walk away. She's willing choosing his burning house over a cold, empty apartment. Think about how sad that really is, guys. We will gladly invite a known, walking disaster into our homes if it means we never have to face the terrifying void of being alone. Right here, her mental walls complete crumb to dust. Elena Mokenmisu confesses she is dead tired of fighting her own conflicting thoughts. Roman tries to play the voice of reason, claiming she is just confused because someone finally showed her a little respect. But guys, the hook is already set. She stares at his beaten face and drops the low word. Roman gives her the classic bad boy warning that this only ends in blood. But she just pulls him in closer. Do not get it twisted, this is not a fairy tale romance. This is two broken people clinging to each other, tasting like copper and stale coffee. He is holding on to her like she is the last raft on the ocean. It is honestly tragic. Sometimes a deeply toxic bond is the only thing keeping a shattered mind from floating off into the abyss. Notice how the director uses the morning light, hitting the kitchen floor to shift the whole mood. Roman presses his scarred forehead against hers, basically swearing that they are past the point of no return. He is offering her absolutely zero stability, just total chaos, and a terrifying level of devotion. And Elena just cries at the sick joke of it all. This ruthless underworld kingpin somehow makes her feel safer than the nice, lawful ex-husband who used to torture her behind closed doors. Roman lets out this broken little laugh and pulls her tight against his chest. It is a crazy paradox that hits you right in the gut. No matter how violent or messed up a person is, there is always this desperate instinct to crawl toward the light. Survival just finds a way, even in the dark. The adrenaline finally runs out and their bodies just shut down. Roman walks her to the bed, and they both collapse onto the dark sheets without even taking their shoes off. Do not romanticize this scene, guys. This is just two traumatized survivors trying to breathe in the dark. The bitter part? Elena is sleeping on the chest of an actual murderer, feeling a sense of peace she never once felt in her normal, suburban life. She wakes up alone to a note and two massive guys with guns guarding her door. And as she stands in that scalding shower, she just accepts this wild new reality. It is a haunting truth about the human brain. When you have spent your whole life walking on eggshells in subtle fear, sometimes the only place you can finally sleep is in the middle of a war zone. The buzzing phone reckoned the vibe, dragging the real world back in the frame. Her friend Maya is texting her, losing her mind with worry. Elena types back that she is crashing with Roman. The digital silence that follows is brutally heavy. Finally, Maya just asks if she is safe and happy. Pause the movie right here. Watch Elena stare at that screen, because her whole definition of happiness has flipped. It used to mean polite dinner parties and playing it safe. Now, it means a danger her pain, and does not flinch. It actually sees in her hand and does not flinch. She types yes, and her hands do not even focus. Sometimes, to finally feel emotionally secure, you have to strike a match and burn down all the polite, socially acceptable lies you used to live by. Fast forward 3 months, and her transformation is just wild to watch. Elena goes from a terrified victim to the absolute queen of the syndicate. She learns the rules of the game, picking up that terrifying sociopathic habit of watching everything whilst absolute nothing. Hanging out with a kingpin has not turned her into a killer, but it has completely numbed her to the gray areas of morality. Roman puts out the word that she is untouchable, handing her a fancy down art gallery to ring front. She has boxed up her old ring front, he has boxed up her old life completely, and it forces us to face a really uncomfortable truth. The strongest, most unbreakable versions of ourselves are almost never built in safe, happy places. They get forged right in the roaring flames of our worst traumas. Look at her new normal now. Elena is casually sipping lats with Maya, completely ignoring the giant wounds with guns guarding the door. Then the director cuts to this cold courtroom scene. Her high-priced lawyer absolutely destroys her abusive ex, Victor, taking his money and slap him with a restraining order so severe he literally flees the state. When Elena signs those final papers, there is zero emotion on her face. No tears, no shaking hands. The monster who ruined her life is just gone. It shows us a brutal fact about recovering from abuse. You cannot heal while you are still playing by the rules of the person who broke you. Cut to 6 months later, and she is looking down from her penthouse, watching the city like a hungry hawk hunting its next meal. Let us break down this final interaction, guys. Roman steps of the shadows and wraps his arms around her waist. It is such a twisted image, this massive narcissistic crime boss who decides who lives and dies, holding her like she is made of glass. He asks what she's thinking about, and she just leans back, admitting this crazy mob life is way better than her past. Then, he drops a heavy leather folder on the table. Inside, the deed and full funding for a brand new women's shelter, entirely in her name. He is literally taking his dirty cartel money and using it to heal her deepest trauma. It is brilliantly ironic. True healing does not come from someone just patting your back and keeping you safe. It happens when someone hands you the heavy machinery you need to take your power back. Expressions on Roman's face right here. He is looking at Elena with this pure worship that you never see in a cold-blooded psychopath. He knows she survived absolute hell, so he bought her the tools to go save other women from the same fate. That is what finally breaks her tough exterior. The tears start falling as he promises her the money is washed totally clean. She pulls him in for a desperate kiss, overwhelmed by this insane mix of gratitude and emotional debt. So there they stand, looking out over the skyline. Two completely messed up, dysfunctional people who somehow managed to align their damage to build a safe haven. And that is the biggest takeaway, folks. Being perfectly healed is a total myth. But two broken pieces that fit together can build a fortress. Let you and I hit pause right here and look at where they end up. Elena is running this massive foundation, pulling people out of the worst nightmare imaginable and giving them lawyers and safe houses. She took her own trauma and flipped it into a shield for everyone else. And Roman, he is just standing in the shadows, a terrifying mob boss ready to drop bodies if anyone threats her. It is totally twisted. He runs a ruthless criminal empire specifically so she can play the saint in total safety. But here is the part that actually hurts. They trust each other completely. No lies, no games. It teaches us a pretty rough lesson, sometimes the deepest. Most unbreakable bonds do not care at all about what polite society thinks is right. They just require total, brutal honesty. We cut to a quiet evening. Roman's pouring champagne and lets out this massive, heavy breath. You can practically see the weight falling off his shoulders. The feds finally dropped their huge investigation into his syndicate. Elena watches his face, asking if the pressure was actually getting to him, and this terrifying apex predator admits his only real fear was losing her. Later, they are lying in the dark, and she is tracing the scars on his chest, asking if he ever regrets the violence. It is a quiet, heavy moment that drives home a simple truth about love. If you want real intimacy with someone, you cannot just stick to the easy stuff. You have to be brave enough to walk right up to their deepest scars and ask about the pain. Just watch his reaction. Roman freezes. Elena does not sugarcoat anything. She lays out his entire violent history, and the coldness he built just to survive. The silence in that room is suffocating. He stares at the ceiling and finally confesses that the things he has done actually keep him awake in a cold sweat. But then he looks right at her. He justifies the blood on his hands, by saying it built the road that led him straight to her. He presses her hand to his chest, totally in awe that she saw the monster inside him and did not run. It is a beautiful reminder for anyone watching. We all carry things we are deeply ashamed of. But finding that one person who accepts your absolute worst parts is what finally brings you peace. Elena presses her lips to his shoulder, whispering her love in the dark. Roman pulls her close, his voice dropping low, cementing this intense trauma bond. They fall asleep not as two healthy people, but as two broken souls who somehow fit together perfectly. Elena is the star of a massive charity gala. The room is packed with rich snobs writing checks, just to feel important, but look at Roman. Look at Roman. He is standing out of sight, just watching. A guy with his past cannot be in the spotlight. But he fuses too far from her. It teaches you something very real about devotion. True love is not about showing off for the cameras and seeking attention. It is about standing quietly in the corner, just making sure nobody ever hurts the person you care about. Stick with me here, because this next scene is incredible. Elena finishes her big speech, and all these wealthy elites swarm her, trying to rub shoulders with the saint. But watch her eyes. She ignores every single one of them and looks straight into the shadows to find Roman. He gives her one silent nod. Later, out on their penthouse balcony, something crazy happens. Roman, this absolute apex predator who controls everything, is shaking. His hands are trembling violently. Think about how massive that is. When a guy who spent his life building an empire of violence suddenly cannot keep his hands steady, his whole world is changing. The lesson here is pretty heavy. Real love will completely shatter the walls you built to protect yours, no matter how tough you think you are. He is standing in the freezing wind, completely tearing down his own armor. Roman admits he knows how much danger his lifestyle puts her in. But then he drops the hardest line of the whole movie. He confesses that her goodness makes him desperate want to be a better man. He pulls out a diamond, and it is not some sweet proposal. It is a demand from a guy who only knows how to conquer. Elena just breaks down crying and says yes, giving in completely to this insane bond they have. And as he slides the ring on her finger, his normally steady, lethal hand is shaking. It is wild to watch, but it leaves you with a really profound thought about life. If committing your entire future to someone does not absolutely terrify you and shake you to your core, it probably is not real. Elena breaks their hug with a wild, breathless laugh. She instantly realizes what this means. Every rival mob boss is going to come after them now just to hurt him. But Roman just gets this terrifying, predatory smile. He welcomes the war, promising to bury anyone who even looks at her wrong. Elena actually calls him her dark savior, which is basically Stockholm Syndrome at this point. He hates the title, but she refuses to take it back. Normal romance goes completely out the window here. But you have to admit, it proves a really powerful point about choosing a partner. Real love is not about finding someone who makes your life perfectly safe and boring. It is about finding the one person on earth who is actually worth risking absolute destruction for. You and I really need to appreciate the irony of this wedding scene. 5 years since the nightmare started, and she is officially taking his last name. There is no press, no normal guests, just a wall of guys in tailored suits holding assault rifles. Making it official. Elena looks right past his scary mob boss persona and talks his straight the broken man's and inside. She promises absolute honesty and swears she will never treat him like just a weapon. It is enough to make you tear up, honestly. It forces you to realize what a real connection actually looks like in the real world. True love is when you look at the absolute darkest, ugliest parts of another person, see all their baggage, and make the conscious choice to stay anyway. What happens next totally flips the script. The most lethal guy in the city is standing at the altar, and he basically strips away all his own power over her. His voice echoes through the room as he promises to protect her without ever locking her in a cage. He owes her everything, because she walked through his personal hell and never flinched. Later, her friend Maya asks if this crazy setup can actually make her happy. Elena just looks across the room at her terrifying new husband. Roman looks back at her with a softness that he has never shown anyone else in his entire life. She tells Maya it is absolutely real. The lesson here is pretty wild but completely true. Sometimes, the only way to be completely free is to have a monster standing guard at your front door. Maya grabs her arm and whispers how terrified she is of the guy Elena just married. Elena just lets out this low laugh. She totally gets why Roman gives normal people absolute panic attacks. But Maya finally hits the nail on the head. The crazy irony is that this apex predator terrifies everyone else, but he never triggers Elena to run. We jump 10 whole years into the future. They are running this massive dual empire. Elena manages 20 rehab centers for trauma victims, while Roman is busy washing his dirty money into legal assets so they never get caught. It is incredible to watch. It teaches us that if a relationship is going to survive the long haul, both people have to evolve together. You either adapt side by side, or you inevitably tear each other apart. Let's stop and look at how his brain works now. Roman is still a ruthless guy. That aggression is hardwired right into his DNA, but notice how he completely flipped it. Instead of using his power to destroy, he used it purely as a shield for her. Out on their gorgeous terrace, Elena brings up the horrible massacre at the ballroom. Roman actually shows a tiny bit of sadness for a girl who died that night, which is huge for him. But here is the kicker. He feels absolute zero guilt about the chaos that ended up trapping Elena in his life in the first place. Not a single ounce of regret. It is a harsh lesson about human nature. You can feel terrible about the damage you caused along the way, but you will never apologize if it got you exactly what you wanted in the end. Now you and I need to look at this absolute powder keg of a scene. Everything goes sideways when Elena gets a message from Victor, her old abuser. Roman instantly snaps into pure territorial predator mode. He is ready to burn cities down and demands to see the message. Victor is hiding in Europe, spinning some pathetic story about being sober just to manipulate her. But watch Elena here. She is ice cold. She does not scream. She does not ask Roman to kill him. She literally just hits delete on the audio file. Roman is completely stunned by her incredible self-control. It gives us the most important life lesson of the whole story. True forgiveness does not mean you have to talk to the person who broke you. You just lock the door and refuse to ever let them inside your head again. Let me pause it right here for a second. Look at how the stage lights drop as she breaks down her own mind. Elena tells this massive crowd that forgiveness isn't about some holy grace. It is just dumping useless baggage. She completely stripped Victor of his power just so she could breathe again. And there is Roman, watching her from the wings like a proud, fascinated predator. He wants to know how she built this mental fortress. Her answer is an absolute gut punch. She says she leveled up the day she tied her to a monitor. 15 years, and flat out refused to become one. 15 years, the worst day of her life, she owns the stage. The lesson here is brutal but true. Surviving isn't just about breathing through the nightmare. It is about the steel you forge in the aftermath. Guys, appreciate the absolute irony of this scene. Society begs victims to make their pain sound pretty, but Elena completely rejects that script. She stands up there performing a public auchis on her own shattered soul. She breaks down the raw, suffocating panic and the exhausting work of building a new life out of literal ashes. She wants everyone to know that true resilience is not some magical gift. It is an aggressive, daily choice to glue the broken pieces back together. The crowd goes wild. But watch her eyes. Out of thousands of people, she is only looking at Roman, the one certified psychopath who actually saw her worth when she was bleeding out on the floor. It proves something profound. Sometimes the most broken people are the only ones who can see you clearly. Watch the mask melt off the second they get home. Elena kicks off her shoes and collapses, totally drained from playing the unbreakable queen. Here is the craziest part of the movie. Roman, the apex predator of the city, quietly turns into a gentle caregiver. He holds her hands and validates her courage. Once their heart rates slow down, she asks the scariest question in the world. Are we actually happy? Roman does not blink before saying yes. They threw every normal romantic trope in the garbage. They looked at the darkest, ugliest parts of each other's trauma and decided to stay right there. The takeaway is simple. Real stability is not found in a fairy tale. You have to build it with your own bare hands out of whatever wreckage you have left. Let us wrap up our watch party with this massive time jump. The life they build is loaded with red flags, but you can't deny it runs on a terrifyingly pure logic. 20 years later, Elena is running her own shelter. A frantic woman runs up to her, using all these formal titles because she is terrified. Elena instant drops boss routine and asks the woman to use her first name. The victim just breaks down sobbing, thanking Elena for giving her a safe place to sleep. It hits so hard, right? Elena and Roman use their own psychological scars as armor, but now she is using that same armor to protect innocent people. It leaves us with a brutal truth. The absolute worst damage you have ever suffered can be flipped and weaponized to shield somebody else from the exact same pain. Listen up, guys. You rarely see this kind of character arc in cinema. We are watching Elena comfort a woman she literally dragged out of hell. Elena tries to play it cool and give the victim all the credit. But the woman looks right at her and says she only survived because Elena showed her she was worth saving. When the room empties, the camera lingers on Elena as she remembers that awful ballroom where her old life was destroyed. That betrayal blew her world apart and left a massive crater. But that crater is exactly where Roman stepped in. She went from a helpless ghost to a master architect of her own fate. Here is the reality check. Sometimes, the only therapy a shattered mind needs to rebuild itself is just one single person who stubbornly refuses to give up on you. Nobody is pretending her glow-up was a clean moral victory. It required some deeply shady choices, the kind of survival tactics you only see in prison movies. But man, it was real. This story proves that an ugly, bleeding truth is always going to outlast a perfectly sanitized lie. Right in the middle of her thoughts, her phone buzzes. It is Roman. She types back one word, always. Jump to a few hours later, and they are sitting in that exact same dingy coffee shop from the beginning. It is their weird little ritual to stay grounded. Roman reaches across the table and grabs her hand. His eyes have that same crazy, predatory intensity from 20 years ago. He leans in and quietly asks if she regrets any of it. True loyalty is finding someone who loves the monster you had to become. Let us unpack this together, you and I. She weighs the cost of this life. The endless paranoia, the violence, the sheer exhaustion of building an empire with a literal mobster. She looks right into his terrifying eyes and tells him she would not change a single thing. Just like that, Roman's icy exterior melts into an intense, exclusive love meant only for her. This is the moment the whole movie clicks. Elena finally realizes the trauma did not break her. It acted like a defibrillator to her soul. It forced her to drop the fairy tale and build a bulletproof life. She turned her biggest weakness into a weapon. The harsh lesson here is undeniable. Sometimes your whole world has to burn down just to clear the land for the castle you were meant to build. We have all been crushed by failure, but hit pause and look at what is actually happening here. Her absolute darkest moment ended up being the exact starting line for her new life. The terrible memories never magically vanished. She just stopped letting those ghosts hold the steering wheel. Outside that coffee shop window, the whole city is running its endless rat race. But inside, these two misfits are just sitting there in quiet rebellion. They engineered a love story that makes every romance novel look like a joke. This is what radical acceptance actually looks like on screen. True connection is not about finding a flawless prince. It is about finding a partner who stares at your ugliest, most volatile flaws and calmly hands you the bricks to build your own personal fortress. At the end of the day, every human heart wants a mirror that shows them their strength instead of their scars. Look at how she squeezes Roman's hand right back, silently calming both of their racing minds. In that split second, the terrified little girl she used to be is finally laid to rest. Elena completely bypassed the whole damsel in distress routine. She did not wait around for a shining knight approved by polite society. Instead, she saved her own life while holding hands with the most dangerous guy in town. It leaves us with a bitter but beautiful truth to walk away with. True safety does not always mean staying in the sunlight. Sometimes, the only way to completely lose your fear of the dark is to stand shoulder to shoulder with the biggest predator in the room.
The most meaningful transformation in the story is Elena's journey from betrayed wife to founder of a powerful survivor support foundation. At the beginning, she feels invisible, abandoned, and humiliated. By the end, she has helped thousands of people escape dangerous relationships, rebuild their lives, and believe they are worth saving. This is the deepest educational lesson. Pain becomes power when we use it to protect others. Elena could have allowed betrayal to make her bitter. She could have hidden from the world, defined herself only as Victor's wounded ex-wife, or let Roman's revenge become the center of her story. Instead, she builds something larger than her pain. Her foundation provides legal support, housing assistance, therapy, job training, and hope to survivors who feel trapped. This is powerful because Elena understands those people not as a distant philanthropist, but as someone who has lived emotional destruction herself. She knows what it feels like to be lied to, isolated, and made to question your own worth. That experience gives her compassion and credibility. The story teaches that survival is not only about escaping what hurt you. It is about deciding what kind of person you will become afterward. Elena becomes someone who creates safety because she once needed safety. She becomes someone who believes in survivors because she once had to believe in herself. For viewers, this message is deeply meaningful. Your worst experience does not have to be the end of your story. It can become the reason you understand others better. It can become the foundation of your mission. Elena's life proves that betrayal did not destroy her. It revealed her strength. And once she found that strength, she used it to help others rise. That is real power, turning wounds into wisdom and wisdom into service.